People love simple rules because simple rules remove responsibility. Wait until 70. Get the biggest check. Be patient. Be disciplined. Delay gratification. That sounds intelligent. It sounds mature. It sounds like the sort of advice a prudent person would follow. But I have spent most of my life watching what happens when people use a rule of thumb in a place where arithmetic should have been doing the work. The result is usually expensive. Not always dramatic. Not always catastrophic. Just quietly expensive. And in retirement, quiet mistakes can cost more than loud ones because they go unchallenged for years. So let me tell you the way I would look at this. If you are 62 years old and you have built a respectable retirement cushion in a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, a 401k, or some combination of those accounts, delaying Social Security is not automatically wise. In many cases, it is simply the default opinion repeated by people who never bothered to ask the next, where is the money supposed to come from while you wait? That question matters because retirement is not lived on slogans. It is lived on cash flow. You can be told that your Social Security check will be larger at 67 than at 62, larger at 70 than at 67. Fine, that part is true. But if you wait for that larger check, you still have to live through those years before it arrives. Groceries do not pause. Insurance does not pause. Property taxes do not pause. Utilities do not pause. Life keeps mailing invoices while the experts tell you to be patient. And if the money that carries you through those years comes out of your investment accounts, you are not merely spending principal. You are also spending future compounding, future flexibility, future tax options, and in some cases, future inheritance value. That is where the popular advice becomes thinner than it first appears. I have always believed that when a decision is important, you should not stare only at the visible number. You should also inspect the invisible trade-off. In this case, the visible number is the larger monthly Social Security benefit you can get by waiting. The invisible trade-off is what you have to liquidate, interrupt, forfeit, or postpone in order to earn that larger number. Most people never put the two side by side. I would let us use plain numbers. Suppose you are 62. Suppose your Social Security benefit would be around $2,000 a month if you claim now. Suppose you need $4,000 a month to live a life that is modest, comfortable, and not full of financial anxiety. Suppose you also have $300,000 in retirement accounts. Now there are two broad paths. In the first path, you delay Social Security. You tell yourself you are being patient. You tell yourself the bigger check later will justify the wait. But while you wait, you still need $4,000 a month. So for the next 8 years, that $4,000 must come out of your retirement accounts. That is $48,000 a year. Over 8 years, that is $384,000 withdrawn. Think about that for a moment. You began with $300,000. Now, before you even get to age 70, you have forced that account to carry a burden larger than its opening balance. Even if the portfolio earns some return along the way, you have still placed a heavy drag on the machine. Every distribution reduces the base that could have compounded. Every withdrawal makes the next year's compounding occur on a smaller pile of money. Now consider the second path. You claim Social Security at 62. The government sends you $2,000 a month. You now need only another $2,000 a month from your savings. That is $24,000 a year instead of $48,000. Over 8 years, that is $192,000 withdrawn, not $384,000. Same retirement, same lifestyle, same person, same years. The only thing that changed was which source paid more of the bill. And that change can leave an enormous difference in the account balance, still compounding by the time you reach 70. If the money left inside the account compounds at something like 6 or 7%, the gap can easily become 6 figures. The irony is delicious. In trying to maximize the future Social Security check, many people minimize the future value of the larger asset sitting right in front of them. I do not like irony when it costs real money. Now some people hear that argument and say, yes, but Social Security is guaranteed and the market is not. That is true, and it is exactly why the decision has to be personal. If you have very little in retirement savings, the case for claiming early is weaker because there is not much compounding left to protect. If you intend to work full-time until 70, the case changes again. If you have reason to believe you will live a very long time, the larger delayed benefit becomes more attractive. If your spending needs are low and your account balances are high, that changes the texture too. But notice what I am doing. I am not reciting a universal commandment. I am weighing trade-offs. That is what intelligent capital allocation looks like. Whether you are buying a business, building a portfolio, or deciding when to claim a government benefit, you ask what you give up in order to get what you gain. Then you compare both sides honestly. There is another thing the simple delay until 70 crowd often ignores. Taxes are a silent partner in almost every retirement decision, and unlike a good partner, they do not contribute any capital. Social Security taxation is not as simple as most retirees assume. Whether benefits are taxed depends on your other income. If you file at 62, while you are living modestly and before required minimum distributions begin, you may find that a meaningful portion of your Social Security is taxed lightly or not taxed at all. But if you wait until 70 and by then your traditional IRA or 401k has grown, and later required distributions begin, and perhaps there is pension income or portfolio income or a property sale or some other cash source, the larger Social Security benefit can show up in a much less friendly tax environment. People fixate on gross benefit size and ignore net spendable income. That is amateur thinking. I have never cared much about the size of a gross number by itself. I care about what remains after friction. Taxes are friction, fees are friction, bad timing is friction. Emotional mistakes are friction. The real world is full of friction, and anyone who plans retirement using only headline figures is planning with one eye closed. Sometimes the smaller benefit claimed earlier leaves more after tax than the larger benefit claimed later. Not always, but often enough that any serious person should examine it. And once you begin thinking that way, another door opens. If you claim Social Security earlier and therefore do not need to take as much from your retirement accounts, you may create a lower income window in your early 60s. A lower income window can be extremely valuable. It can allow you to convert portions of a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA at tax rates that are gentler than the ones you may face later. It can reduce the future size of required minimum distributions. It can give you more control over what kind of income you recognize and when control matters. Retirement is often described as if it were one big number. I do not see it that way. Retirement is a period in which control over timing becomes one of your most valuable assets. Control over when you withdraw. Control over what account you withdraw from. Control over taxes. Control over how much market exposure you want to carry. Control over how much time you want to exchange for money. When a strategy improves control, I pay attention. Now let me move to the part most calculators flatten into a footnote. Spousal benefits, when I hear blanket advice on Social Security. I know immediately that it is incomplete if it does not discuss the household rather than the individual. Many retirement decisions are not solo decisions. They are family cash flow decisions. If one spouse has the larger earnings record and the other has the smaller one, the timing of one claim can affect what the other spouse can receive. A spouse generally cannot access spousal benefits until the primary worker has filed, so waiting is not merely delaying your own income. In some households, it is delaying your spouse's ability to tap into a larger spousal benefit structure at all. That can mean real money is left on the table forever. Imagine a lower earning spouse who could claim a modest personal benefit at 62, then later step up to a larger spousal benefit once the higher earning spouse files. There are situations where claiming earlier creates one stream of income now and access to a stronger stream later. If instead both people sit around waiting for the optimal age according to a generic chart, they may sacrifice years of household income that can never be recovered. I am not fond of irreversible mistakes. The same is true with survivor benefits, which are even more emotionally difficult to talk about and therefore even more likely to be ignored. If a higher earning spouse delays and ultimately locks in a larger benefit, that may increase the survivor benefit available to the other spouse later. Fine, that is a real advantage. But there are also cases where the lower earning spouse claiming earlier makes perfect sense, because it brings money into the household immediately without reducing the possibility of stepping up to the higher survivor benefit later, if the higher earning spouse dies first. Again, this is why canned advice is so dangerous. The problem is not that the advice is always wrong. The problem is that it is too blunt for the precision the decision deserves. The real unit of analysis is not my benefit versus your benefit. The real unit of analysis is the entire household timeline. Which dollars arrive when? Which account gets drawn down first? Which spouse is healthier? Which spouse is older? Which benefit is likely to matter most if one person dies early? Which years are the lowest tax years? Which years are the healthiest years? That last point deserves more respect than the financial industry usually gives it. I have seen people behave as if retirement were a contest to see who can postpone enjoyment the longest. They delay spending, delay travel, delay hobbies, delay generosity, delay freedom, delay rest, delay the part they were supposedly saving for in the first place. Then the body votes, and the body often votes earlier than the spreadsheets expected. There is a phrase I like because it is simple and brutally true. Retirement has go years, slow go years, and no-go years. In the go years, you still have the energy to move, travel, explore, play golf, visit grandchildren, take the long trip, take the short trip, hike the trail, learn the hobby, volunteer, help people in person, sit in the sun without your knees filing a complaint with management. In the slow-go years, some of that remains, but less. In the no-go years, money may still be there, but your range of use narrows. That matters. A dollar is not equally valuable in every year of retirement. A dollar available at 62, while your health is decent and your independence is high, often has more life inside it than the same dollar arriving at 78. Economists can argue with that sentence if they want. Human beings know it is true the moment they watch aging happen up close. If filing earlier gives you more usable income in the healthiest years of retirement, that benefit is not trivial. It is not merely emotional. It is economic. In the most important sense, money is a claim on life options. When the life options are richest, the claim is worth more. This is where people get confused about discipline. Real discipline is not automatically postponing everything. Real discipline is matching your money to reality. If reality says your best years of mobility, appetite, and independence are concentrated in your 60s and early 70s, then a retirement income plan that starves those years in order to inflate later checks may be disciplined in appearance and foolish in substance. I have never thought much of appearance when substance is available. There is also the matter of longevity. A great deal of Social Security advice is built on break-even math. The break-even math is useful. It simply is not sufficient. Yes, if you wait, there will often be an age at which the cumulative amount received from the larger delayed checks finally overtakes the cumulative amount received from claiming earlier. Depending on the assumptions, that may be in the mid-70s or around 80 or so. Fine. That is a useful starting point. But break-even math usually assumes a clean world. It assumes one lifespan, one tax environment, one spending path, one market path, no household complications, no health shocks, no caregiving interruption, no need for liquidity, no interest in quality of life timing. In other words, it assumes away the very things that make retirement planning real. If you have family history that suggests shorter longevity or current health issues that make an exceptionally long life less likely, then waiting is not automatically conservative. It may be aggressive. You are in effect making a bet that your future self will be around long enough and healthy enough to collect the payoff from the delayed strategy. Maybe that bet is sensible. Maybe it is not. But let us call it what it is. It is a bet. I like bets when the odds are favorable and the downside is acceptable. I dislike bets people enter by accident because someone on television described them as prudent. Sometimes filing early is not pessimistic. Sometimes it is honest. I know people resist that because it feels unpleasant. They hear claim earlier if longevity is uncertain and think the suggestion is dark. It is not dark. It is rational. Money exists to support life as it is actually likely to unfold. not life as we would prefer to imagine it. Then there is the simplest reason of all. Need, not glamorous need, not spreadsheet need, plain life need. Some households need the income. Medical costs rise, a child needs help. A grandchild needs help, rent jumps, insurance premiums climb, a roof gives up, a car becomes unreliable, one spouse burns out, a part-time consulting plan never materializes. A widow does not want to keep drawing down savings while waiting for an optimal claim age. In those cases, the argument often becomes absurdly academic. People say, yes, but you get more later if you wait. That can be true in some narrow arithmetic sense, while still being completely useless advice. A person who needs liquidity now is not made safer by a hypothetical larger check 8 years from now. I have always liked cash flow more than theory, because cash flow can pay the bill on Tuesday. Now there is one more angle that deserves attention, and it is an angle many retirees underestimate. Partial work. Retirement does not have to mean zero income. In fact, one of the healthiest arrangements for many people is a mixture of some guaranteed income, some portfolio growth, and some optional earned income. Claiming Social Security at 62 can work beautifully in a plan where a person also does a limited amount of consulting, freelance work, part-time service, or project work on their own terms. That structure changes the emotional landscape. When Social Security covers part of the monthly need, and a modest amount of earned income covers another part, it is not being rated constantly. It continues compounding. The retiree keeps flexibility. The retiree keeps agency. The retiree often keeps social contact and mental stimulation without surrendering full-time freedom. That is a far better life than many people imagine when they hear the word retirement. I have always believed in keeping optionality. A person with optionality is hard to corner. Social Security plus modest earned income plus protected investment compounding is a high optionality setup. It lets you adjust. It lets you work because you want to, not because the refrigerator has become threatening. But let me be fair. This strategy is not magic. If your retirement account balance is tiny, there may not be enough compounding left to justify protecting it at all costs. If your expected investment returns are poor or your allocation is inappropriate, the math changes if you will likely live into your 90s and have no strong desire to spend more in the early years. Waiting can still be very sensible. If the higher earning spouse is deciding whether to delay in order to maximize a survivor benefit for the other spouse, there are strong cases for delay. If you are still earning substantial wages before full retirement age, the earnings rules become relevant and have to be incorporated carefully. That is why I distrust people who hand out conclusions before they inspect circumstances. The right answer is very often a custom answer. But custom does not mean unknowable. It means you run the numbers honestly. You look at your account balances. You estimate your spending. You model taxes. You think about life expectancy realistically, not theatrically. You examine the spousal picture. You inspect the survivor picture. You compare what happens if you take more from the portfolio for 8 years versus less. You ask which approach leaves you with more flexibility, more after-tax income, more resilience, and a better life in the years that matter most. That is not overcomplication. That is respect for reality. I have spent enough years in capital allocation to know that there are 3 kinds of mistakes. The first kind is a clear mistake you can see instantly. Those are easy to fix. The second kind is a complex mistake that takes work to uncover. Those are harder. The third kind is the most common and the most dangerous. It is the socially approved mistake. The one everybody repeats. The one that sounds wise in conversation. The one nobody examines because it arrives with a halo weight until 70 often belongs in that third category. It is not always wrong. That is why it survives. But it is often repeated so carelessly that it becomes wrong for the people listening. What I would prefer is a different question. Not how do I maximize the check, but how do I maximize the usefulness of all my resources over the life I am likely to live? That question changes everything. Suddenly, Social Security is not a trophy for waiting. It is a tool in a larger system. The Roth IRA is not just a bucket of money. It is a tax-free compounding engine you may want to preserve. The traditional IRA is not just a pile of future withdrawals. It is a tax-managed reservoir whose sequencing matters. The 400 wonk is not just your backup plan. It is a major asset whose long-term value can be materially altered by what you force it to do in your early 60s. And retirement itself is not merely the longest period possible with the largest eventual government deposit. It is a finite stretch of life in which time, health, freedom, and money interact in messy ways. I would rather have a slightly smaller monthly benefit with a stronger balance sheet, better tax control, more household optionality, and more usable freedom in my go-go years than a larger monthly benefit achieved by starving the early years and draining compounding dry. That preference is not emotional. It is economic. At Berkshire, we always tried to avoid doing something that looked smart in isolation, but dumb in context. If a decision improved one visible metric while damaging the larger economic picture, it was not a good decision. I look at Social Security the same way. A larger monthly check by itself is not the goal. The goal is a better retirement. Better means your money lasts. Better means your taxes are manageable. Better means your spouse is protected. Better means your survivor plan makes sense. Better means you are not forced to liquidate assets unnecessarily. Better means your 60s are not treated as an inconvenient bridge to some future date at which you finally permit yourself to live. Most people spend their working years being told to sacrifice the present for the future. There is wisdom in that up to a point, but retirement is where some people carry that habit too far. They keep sacrificing the present even after they have already earned the right not to. They postpone freedom in the name of maximizing a variable they never should have maximized in the first place. I think that is backwards. The first purpose of financial intelligence is not to die with the largest spreadsheet. The first purpose is to use resources rationally while you are alive. So here is my own conclusion. If you are 62 and you have a few $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, and claiming Social Security now would reduce pressure on those accounts, preserve compounding, improve tax flexibility, possibly support spousal strategy, possibly protect survivor outcomes, and provide more usable income during the healthiest years of retirement, then filing early is not reckless. It may be the most rational move available to you. Not because the government check is larger, because the total life economics are better. And that is how I would think about it. Not with slogans, not with fear. Not with some worship of delayed gratification after delayed gratification has stopped serving its purpose. I would look at the whole chessboard. I would count the visible dollars and the invisible opportunity costs. I would respect taxes. I would respect compounding. I would respect household structure. I would respect mortality. And I would respect the fact that the best years of retirement are not an abstract concept. They are perishable inventory. Spend them carefully, protect them aggressively, and do not let a bigger number later trick you into giving away a better life now.